Windows Weekly comes to you from the TWiT LastPass studios. Securing every access point doesn't have to be a challenge. LastPass unifies access and authentication to make securing your employees simple and secure. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Episode 659, recorded Wednesday, February 12th, 2020. Our Marshmallow Raspberry Cherry Vanilla Slush Pop. Windows Weekly is brought to you by CacheFly. Give your users the seamless online experience they deserve. Power your site or app with CacheFly's CDN and be 30% faster than the competition. Learn more at twit.cachefly.com. And by ZipRecruiter. Hiring can be a challenge, but there's one place you can go where hiring is fast and easy. That place is ZipRecruiter, where growing businesses connect to qualified candidates. Try it free at ziprecruiter.com/windows. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft. Mary Jo Foley is in position, ready to block all shots from Paul Thurrott at goal. Mary Jo Foley writes about Microsoft at ZDNet, allaboutmicrosoft.com. Paul Thurrott has his own very own blog called Thurrott.com, THURROTT.com. Before we get to the Windows news, and there's a lot of it today, a lot of it. Big story just broke. Two big stories just broke.
Yep.
Mobile World Congress has been canceled.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Jennifer Aniston turned 51. But yeah, that's a big story too.
And J.Ann turned 51. Yeah, Mobile World Congress, because of the coronavirus, the GSM Association, which runs the conference, just this morning sent out an email saying, yeah, I think some of it is not fear of coronavirus. I think some of it is the fact there's no one, everybody else is, yes, Sony is now dropped out, LG, a lot of companies. Nokia.
Amazon, Sony, yep.
Big long list, MediaTek.
Yeah.
But not Microsoft. Microsoft was going to stick with it.
I know.
In fact, they were bugging me as recently as yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow.
They're like, oh, we never heard back from you. You're coming? I'm like, I don't know if you noticed, but the whole world is not coming.
You've gone, in many years in the past, I've always been very jealous because it's held in Barcelona, which is one of my favorite cities.
Oh, God. It is literally right neck and neck with Paris for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I put it right there. What tell us about Mobile World Congress and what its importance is?
Well, it's the biggest. Well, it's a mobile. Obviously, as its name says, it's a mobile show, but it's a phone show. It started out as, well, I don't know if it started out, but back the first I had ever heard of it, it was back in the cell phone days.
Right.
And it used to be held right in the middle of Barcelona. Like they moved it out to a giant modern facility in the middle of nowhere. But it is, it's in Barcelona, right? So. I love going to Barcelona.
Yeah,
but I couldn't swing it this year because Microsoft had nothing interesting to announce.
In the past, a lot of phones were shown and announced there. That's become less and less the case, right, Mary Jo?
Yeah, and last year was the HoloLens too. So last year was huge for Microsoft.
For us, yeah.
Yeah.
But not this year so much.
I wonder, this is going to happen. And obviously the biggest players in the mobile world, Samsung, Apple, et cetera, have their own shows anyway.
Yeah, Samsung had a big show yesterday. So
and I bet a lot of these companies are going to be like, why are we going to this show every year?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's what was going on. I mean, so many companies there was no cost to them to cancel. It was like, oh thank God.
Well, a lot of the big, Asia is the biggest center now, but I think back in the day, the big center for this stuff was in Europe. And that's why probably why it is in Europe. But when you think about it, it would make more sense for this thing to be in somewhere in Asia.
IFA is the other big conference. That's in Berlin every year, but that won't be till this summer. That almost certainly IFA will.
Yeah, we'll all be dead or everything will be fine. Either way.
It seems a little bit like overreaction. I almost feel like, do they know something we don't know?
But what do you think is going to happen with Computex? That's what I was wondering.
That's in Taiwan. That's a big one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When's that? Is that
That's
soon?
usually like May, right?
Yeah.
Around May.
Well, didn't the organizers of Mobile World Congress prevent or try to prevent people from a certain part of China from even coming to the show?
Did they?
Yeah, they said
back
if
when they
you're
were still
from
having it.
Hubei province, you can't.
wow.
Computex this year is June, and
June.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about epidemiology, but what I've been reading is that these viruses kind of, and I think the president told me this, the viruses calm down in the summer when it gets hot.
Because they get tired.
They get tired. So
if you go back and watch Night of the Living Dead and they have radio and TV broadcasts going on in the background, you'll notice that canceling Mobile World Congress was one of the expected causes of the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. So the zombie apocalypse is upon us.
Excellent.
Turns out to be coronavirus, and this is the actually, I do think I said this before on the other shows. We've dodged a bullet because coronavirus started in October, November, and there were a lot of Chinese visitors, Chinese companies at CES in January.
That's right.
Could have been a nightmare. There was no coronavirus in January in CES, but boy, it could have been bad. We would have all come back, and there's a 2-week incubation. So people would have sickened.
From all over the country.
And then dispersed out, and 2 weeks later, yikes.
Well, the good news department, maybe that would have been the end of CES. But
honestly, I think this might be the death knell of conferences.
Right.
Why do we even do this anymore?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it does make you wonder and worry. I mean, every year after CES, I used to come back and be so sick. Just like the CES flu.
Everybody says that. And so now we're thinking, gosh, maybe that's not a minor annoyance. Maybe that could be something much more significant sometime.
Well, imagine, I'll just pull like a PC maker because, I think about this stuff more like PCs, but you're HP or Dell or Lenovo. I mean, how much less expensive would it be to go to New York for a couple of days, go to San Francisco for a couple of days, and then maybe if you have to cover, go to London or wherever in Europe and just do it that way. Rather than ship 100 people down to Vegas at the most expensive time of year to have a hotel. And they could just do their own things.
I'm glad I went.
The only thing you miss at those is the face-to-face networking, right?
Yeah.
No, but that's what I mean. In other words, these companies could do their own things.
Yeah.
And companies
that's more costly if you have to go to 20 different events.
Well, they only have to have a few.
I think
the
internet has solved all this. I really realized this year, going to CES for the first time in 8 years, that it's like a football game. You can go in person, and that's fun because you get the feelings and the excitement. But you don't see the game. If you want to know what's happening at CES, stay home and watch it on TV.
Right? Okay, but the analogy breaks down because when you go to the football game, at least you know where the football game is. Like CES, the football game could be anywhere. It's a stadium full of stuff, and you have no idea where the game is happening.
Very good point. That's the point being that it's hard to see the forest for the trees. There's just so much stuff.
Even trying to meet people there, you're like, when can we do a meeting and where?
Right.
Or like the PC makers would be off site, right? And so now they all basically go to the same place. But I remember, years ago, Lenovo would say, well, we're at whatever the name of the hotel is. It's off the strip. But then you'd have to get there. And, if you've ever been to Vegas during one of these shows,
miles long.
Traveling around is terrible.
So why did Comdex die, and why didn't CES die too at the same time?
Right.
What was the difference between those two? Because Comdex was bigger even than CES.
Yeah, it was. So I could only guess, and maybe someone's written something like this up, but it seems like as the IT industry consolidated to a couple of big companies, those companies became the central point, and they would have their own shows like Microsoft did does now with Ignite or TechEd back in the day. Salesforce has their own thing. That there aren't. In the consumer space, there are 1 million companies that matter. In the IT space, there are 5, and they're humongous. I mean, not that there aren't a bunch of smaller companies, and they have their own events too, companies like VMon and VMware and so forth. So I just think the world changed. I think it's weird that CS kept going in a way, or is still going, because, A, it makes no sense. It's the wrong time of year, for one thing. And you can only have a show like that in certain places. So, you got to go to Vegas. CES, I remember Comdex used to have like a spring show. Or
they had two.
Spring Comdex.
Yeah. And so did CES.
Spring and fall Comdex,
So in the Wikipedia article, it says in 2000, a number of things happened. Major companies, IBM, Apple, Compaq, discontinued their attendance at Comdex. And then there was the .com bubble.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So there was such a scale back in the last Comdex Vegas show, November 2003, 500 exhibitors, 40,000 visitors. That's a big drop. That's 20%.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
They tried to bring it back,
like,
I recall. But.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also feel like CES has morphed a lot. Like it used to be more about PCs, and then now it's like TVs and washing machines.
And IoT. It's an IoT show. But there's also cars.
Comdex never really did.
It was
right?
about
like
PCs.
Comdex stayed about PCs,
Right.
and it was a dealer show, right? Like that
Right.
was the original Comdex. So
Well, CES probably was originally that kind of a show too. I mean, both of them eventually just let everybody in.
So maybe that's the problem. Mobile World Congress, which is basically mobile phones, has the same as the Comdex problem. It's too narrow. CES is the only way that a lot of companies can meet potential dealers, can show products from all over the world. There's one place everybody goes. You get pavilions from every country in the world. I think maybe CES has more of a raison d'etre, has a rationale for existence.
Maybe. CeBIT lasted until a couple of years ago.
That was even bigger than Comdex.
Yep, and CeBIT was arguably the same kind of show as Comdex, I guess.
Yeah, but it's gone too, right?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago.
Computex makes sense because it's all the Taiwanese manufacturers bringing their new computers to one spot.
Yeah.
So maybe CES will continue, but I have to say, I guess my question is, will the coronavirus scare be over, which it will at some point, and then people forget about it? I mean, we had, the pandemic of 1918 killed hundreds of millions of people. We forgot about that pretty quick.
What trade shows did that kill? I can't remember.
Yeah. It did not kill IFA, which I think was around back then. So I wonder, anyway, it's a big story. I thought
you said there were two big stories, though. What was
the other one? A big story for me, not so much for you. Andy Rubin, who created Android, went to Google, was fired due to sexual harassment with a $90 million parachute, took some of that money, got investors to create a company called Essential. He raised, it was $1 billion valuation, spent $300 million to create the Essential phone. That was a flop. Essential today went out of business. Andy Rubin closed
That's
it.
a big deal, I think, for everybody. I mean,
well, it's kind of like the Kin. One bad
that's
phone.
not true. The Kin had two phones, Leo.
Okay.
Andy Rubin got kinned.
He got kinned. And then we'll talk about it in a bit, but of course the Samsung event and that what that means for the Neo and Duo. But really the big news of this week, and we should get to it, is Windows 10X revealed.
Yep.
What is Windows 10X?
Finally. So remember we used to talk a lot about Santorini and Windows Lite, like this idea of them making Windows more consumer focused, more streamlined.
This is not
based
core.
On
this is not Windows Core.
Yeah,
it is
based on top of Windows Core OS. Yep, this is it. Here it is. 10X.
I want to prepare you folks for something that you're going to find alarming.
Uh-oh.
So if anyone is listening to this, they should sit down. I love this thing.
I am alarmed.
Oh no! Where did you put Paul? What happened to Paul?
I think this is the smartest thing Microsoft has done for Windows in forever.
Well, okay, so we now have 3 bizarre bugs in Windows 7 after end of life, which the moral of that story to me is this thing is such spaghetti code that you can't change, even after 10 years of fixes.
I don't know, Leo. I mean, how many times have you bought a product of any kind and had it go south the second the warranty expired?
That's true.
That's true. That's true.
That's just bad karma. That's the toast landing butter side down. But I feel like it is illustrative of the fact that this code base is freaking old and freaking messy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it is.
So I like the idea, but how much of a rewrite is Windows Core?
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a rewrite.
I wouldn't
would
either.
Call it
I'd say so.
shuffling.
They've been Yeah, they've been trying to do this for years, right? They used to have this thing called One Core, which was the idea that they could take common pieces that would work across different device types and pull them out and have like this unified base platform that would work on different kinds of hardware, right? So they've been trying to do this for years, trying to detangle the core of Windows.
Yeah.
So Windows Core OS
a lot of the modularization stuff, right?
Right.
Like componentization.
Right. So
whatever.
Windows Core OS is that. But on top of it, then you have all this other infrastructure, which is what we learned about at Developer Day this week. We learned about all the containerization they're going to do, how that's going to work, what the new shell will and won't do in this operating system. So it was finally like Microsoft explained all the things we had been writing as rumors all at once. Right.
You know, to kind of put it in historical perspective, Microsoft had, I'm going to use the word created, just don't bear with me, but created DOS, created Windows on top of it. And it was, a nightmare from a reliability perspective. And very early on, Gates and Microsoft wanted to do something more modern. They wanted something that could compete with Unix. Ended up bringing David Cutler and a bunch of other people from Digital over to Microsoft, created NT. And then the plan was for NT to eventually replace Windows to become Windows, and it did. And it took until 2001 for that to happen. So the original version of NT shipped in 1993. I want to say those guys came over from Digital probably in, 89, somewhere around then, something like that. But so, however you want to measure that, from shipping the first version, NT 3.1 in 1993, and making it look and work like Windows 3.1, and then eventually having it take the place of Windows in Windows XP in 2001, right? And so today, it's about 20 years later, so quite a bit more time has passed. But you have to give, seriously, Dave Cutler, I mean, this thing is so resilient and was so well designed that it was able to continue all these years and has been adapted to all kinds of different uses, not just on computers. The Xbox is based on NT, et cetera, et cetera. So this thing is not a complete rewrite. It's not a new OS. It's not like a microkernel. It's not whatever. But it is the same basic fundamental architecture. But what separates this from the stuff that Microsoft worked on previously, these other attempts to modernize Windows, Windows RT, Windows 10 on ARM, Windows 10 S mode, et cetera, is that they finally are acknowledging that this thing can't be called Windows unless it runs all of the apps. But we still have to solve that same problem we've always had, which is that most of the apps that people run on Windows today are insecure, unreliable. They're Win32 desktop apps. And so how do you do that in a way that is safe and still performs well? And so the solution they came up with is the one we've been talking about for a long, long time. I used to describe this as some combination of containers and virtualization. And if you look at their description, that's exactly what this is.
It is. I know.
So that's one of the reasons I like it, but, and by the way, I don't have the hardware. I don't know how well it's going to run, et cetera. And we can talk about all that. But I mean, this is a way to move forward with this platform. And I mean, it seems to me like it's a very good idea.
So to me, the biggest surprise that we heard yesterday at Windows Developer Day was every app is going to run in a container.
Yes.
Like we knew containers
that's good.
were going to play in.
Yeah.
We knew containers were going to be there, but we didn't know it was for every app, right? We didn't know that.
There were two big surprises. Yeah. So when we had heard containers a year ago or so, and at the time, when you hear that, you think, well, obviously what they mean by that is Win32 apps are going to run in containers, and that each of those apps will have its own container, and that's how you're going to isolate it from the OS. They'll virtualize the registry and do all those things that we've seen over the years with various virtualization solutions. Except it's not like that at all. It's interesting. Like Win32 apps all run in the same container. Modern Win32 apps that are packaged using Microsoft's latest MSIX packaging scheme will each run in their own container inside of the Win32 container. And then UWP apps, which will run in what's called a native container. And that's really interesting because, again, Microsoft collectively, I guess, has seen this kind of mobile platform as the future of Windows for a long time. The market has obviously not gone in that direction, but those apps will each run in their own container, according to Microsoft. And that may or may not be really, I don't know if that's semantically or realistically or it's just literally different than what's happening today in Windows 10. I'm not actually sure yet, but Yeah, that was very interesting. I didn't expect the whole thing to be based on containers, but it is.
Me neither. Nope.
I think that's exciting.
It
as
is.
long as you can communicate together and stuff. I don't know how containerized mobile apps are, but I feel like that's.
Well, I think with mobile apps, we would have used the term sandboxed.
Right.
And
containering is different. It's very lightweight though, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they say. So like as of today, I can't say, like, is this a semantic thing or is it literally a technical difference? I don't know for sure yet.
So what we did learn, though, about the container is it's not a VM, right? Like there's actually the Win32 subsystem in it. Like there's part of the operating system in the container. So that's why they didn't call it a virtual machine.
You got your operating system in my container. It's like
exactly.
You know what this reminds me of thematically, and I would say technically as well, is when Apple moved to Mac OS 10. And they had was essentially a container to run classic apps, and it was one container for all classic apps that it would run in this environment. And it sounds like it's something like that. Yeah.
The problem is that I've heard from some people, it's not the entire operating system in the container, because that isn't how you would build that, right? Mm-hmm. Since there isn't the entire operating system inside the Win32 container, it means they're having compatibility issues. Like they kind of glossed over that in the developer day. They said, you know what, most Win32 apps are going to run. But what I heard is,
by the way,
so far, no.
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, but if you take that sentence at face value, depending on where you see it, they've added something to the end of the sentence, and that something is at launch, because this thing is going to improve over time as well. And some of the reasons you're going to have compatibility issues are because some of the changes they made to the shell. Applications that install and put something in the tray are not going to have that thing in the tray anymore, even though that will fail silently in the Apple install. Or apps that try to extend the file the file explorer with like a right click option you sometimes see after you install an app, that's going to silently fail as well. I'm sure antivirus stuff will be problematic. I'm sure games won't work well. I'm sure there'll be all kinds of different things. But the fundamental difference between this and, again, those other things, RT, S mode, Windows 10 on ARM, is it not working on launch day does not mean it doesn't work forever. Whereas in those other things, though, if it didn't work, it's not going to work. You would have to, as the developer of the app, change it to make it work. Whereas in this case, it's the operating system support that's going to change. And it's hard for me not to look at this and think, why didn't they just do this? 10 years ago, 8 years ago.
I don't mean to make a joke out of it, but it's a hard computer science problem, right? Because if you look at that one slide they showed with RDP and how that was connected and where the kernel is and where the drivers are going to sit, I'm like, wow, this is not just like we slap some containers on top of Windows Core. This is huge. This is why this is taking them so long and it's so hard to pull off, because it's really complicated what they're trying to do.
The real question is, how isolated are these containers? Because that's what you really want. You want these, because if for instance you install malware, you want it to run in this isolated environment where it can't contaminate.
So we can't say authoritatively at this point, but the thing is, people, I've written about this for so long. It's weird. I can't remember when this first came up, but I always refer to this kind of stuff as like this legacy deadwood. But the problem is you can't get rid of it without Windows being Windows, right? You can't just cut off a huge chunk of Win32 and say we're not doing this anymore. But when you do something like this where you containerize it, for lack of a better term, however it's done, whatever the level of protection is, you have arrived at something more sophisticated than has been the case with Windows for the past almost 20 years. You are at least, we don't know what the level is. You're wondering what the isolation is. We don't know yet for sure. But it is a level of isolation that does not exist today, whatever it is.
This has been coming because Microsoft and Intel both have been working on this hypervisor technology. So it's been built into the hardware. It's been built into the operating system. So that helped.
Yeah.
And I played a lot with Docker. I mean, I've set up Docker containers and instances, and I've used Alpine Linux and other operating systems in Dockers. I've set up, and I'm still not fully clear. Maybe somebody can explain this to me.
Well,
The difference between
first of all,
containers and VMs.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to. You don't have to worry about this though. But the point of Windows 10X
I understand
is that
this happens automatically.
Yeah.
But from the point of view of behind the scenes, what does it mean?
Right.
So one thing I'll say, and I'm saying this as a layperson, I mean, both of you know a lot more about how operating systems work than I do, but I can tell you this. The word container is such a loaded term, and Microsoft uses it for so many things. Like the sandbox that's in Windows 10 right now, sometimes they call that a container. That's not the same kind of container that we're talking about with Win32 and MSIX. I would say that's
literally a virtualization solution, but the lines are probably blurry between those things. The official Microsoft description of this container technology says that it is virtualization-like, but is not virtualization.
Right. And the other thing I asked them
from
that really clears it up for me.
Thank you.
No, you know what? So you know what I asked them? I said, how similar or different is this from the infrastructure that you're using for WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux? Like, is it a thin version of Hyper-V that's inside? And they couldn't answer me, or they wouldn't answer me. They just said, conceptually, it's kind of like that, and that's all they would say. They wouldn't say if it was that.
It's interesting because I'm positive I saw them compare it to WSL.
They did, but they never said it ran Hyper-V. Yep, they said that.
Yeah,
they did say that.
Right. I mean, so if the central question is exactly how does this work, like I said, right now we can't say, but the thing is the emulator came out yesterday. We finally have access to the code. Smart people like Raphael, the Walking Cat, and others are going to look at this thing, and they're going to pull stuff out and say, look, here's how they did this, or this is what this is, and this matches what they said, or this doesn't match what they said, and we'll see. But it can't be Windows without the whole Win32 stuff. It has to all be there. But if it's all there and you can't arbitrarily install an application that can ruin the rest of the system, to me, that solves the problem.
Right.
Let me read something from Electronic Design. The container system requires an underlying common operating system. That's the key here. That provides basic service to all of the containerized applications using virtual memory support for isolation.
A hypervisor. The Core OS.
Yeah.
Right?
So the Core OS would have to be written to do this. A hypervisor runs VMs that each has their own operating system. They can be different operating systems, and there's hardware VM support. So container systems are lighter weight because they don't have to contain all of the nitty-gritty that it operates. But the advantage of a VM really is isolated. You can run Windows and Mac and
what you
Linux
really want for virtualization in many cases, you're trying to run an app. You're not really trying to run the operating system necessarily.
Right. You don't want
obviously in some
Why
instances
would you?
You want the
that duplicates effort.
Right.
So the container systems do provide service isolation between containers, and so that's why you would use that. The isolation, right? So I don't know if that's
so.
Next week we're going to know more. Next month we're going to know more. It just happened. We're still trying to kind of figure it out.
I think the way I think of it in my own mind is host and guest, right? So the container is the guest, right? The container in the case of Win32 has container files. It has the registry, and I believe it also has kernel and drivers based on a diagram they showed.
The host does or the guest?
That's both, I thought.
Yeah, so in other words, the Win32 container probably has the drivers that today we think of as Windows drivers.
Right, and I was thinking originally the guest would not have the kernel and the drivers, that it would just leave the kernel and drivers in the host. But when they showed it, it seemed like there was some overlap in that kernel and drivers was in both.
I think we need to not worry about the details quite yet. I mean, I mean, this is really getting in the weeds.
Each VM will have its own kernel, though. That's the thing. But I don't think a container normally has a kernel.
So
that's why
it's a shared kernel. Normally,
I think the word container is a loaded word. Like I said,
I think it's a weird maybe they're not really containers.
Oh well, okay. Well, okay. Here's the bigger question that I have. One of the things they announced at the beginning of the show is that Intel is working on processors that architecturally are very similar to ARM processors, that they have big cores and little cores. And so if you think about the mobile app platform that's in Windows today, which is UWP essentially, those apps support auto suspend. They can, they don't just die and lose data. They're smart about that kind of thing. They're better with the battery, et cetera, et cetera. those apps would really benefit from that kind of environment. They're making changes to Win32 through the container so that they also behave differently than they do today and will behave better, but could break as well, right? And so they talked about maybe having an option where you can turn that off or whatever. I'm wondering now if these first Windows 10X devices will always have that kind of processor, or if you'll be able to buy some that are using a traditional Intel processor. And if you think about a device like whatever the Lenovo thing was called, they announced previously, if they sell a version of that with Windows 10 Pro and a version with Windows 10X, does that mean that the Windows 10 Pro version is internally using an Intel traditional processor, core processor, but the 10X version internally, even though the outside looks the same, is the same, is using this new type of processor? And if that's the case, that kind of suggests you're not going to be going back and forth between these systems, right? 10X sounds like something you're going to get on a new piece of hardware, and that's it.
Which is what they've said so far.
I think part of the reason that they're fudging a little bit is this is a Microsoft document, literally, that says containers versus virtual machines.
There you go.
And if this paragraph, I think, in the isolations table,
there you go.
Container typically provides lightweight isolation from the host and other containers, but doesn't provide as strong a security boundary as a VM. And then I think this sentence is why it's confusing. You can increase security by using the Hyper-V isolation mode to isolate each container in a lightweight VM. So there is kind of this hybrid container in a VM thing using Hyper-V.
You know what, though? The non-parenthetical part of that paragraph, to me, is something you would want to do on the new architecture. Yeah. If you're going to turn on Hyper-V isolation mode, it sounds like you're going to want a beefy processor and lots of RAM.
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
Which, by the way, and one of the many reasons I think of this as kind of the new NT, does this become the new architecture for Windows over time? Right. You know, we know that in some future generation, they're going to put this thing on traditional form factors like laptops. But does this pull an NT and become Windows over time?
Or is it just the flavor of the month? And this has become like,
I mean, of course,
you know,
is this strike 4? Object. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Well, right now it sounds great. Sounds very promising. You isolate all the different processes running so that they can't influence each other and you can't be hacked. But as soon as somebody figures out a lightweight, easy way to cross the membrane, and it doesn't provide any security, then everybody's going to say, well, that was an interesting idea.
It's not just that. We don't have hardware, right? So everything sounds great until you actually use it in real life. And so, you know, it's easy to get excited about like the benefits of S mode or, you know, Windows 10 on ARM, but these things tend to fall apart in real world use. So that could happen here too. I think there's a reason why this system, there are many reasons, but one of the reasons it's shipping first on these new form factors is because that will naturally isolate their use to these kind of mobile form factors. And it will give you, as the user, more of an acceptable understanding of the performance because it's that type of device. If this thing shipped on a laptop and it ran like crap, it might be stillborn. You know?
Yep. Right. When they announced this back in October, when they first talked about 10X, but they didn't tell us about the internals, the one thing they kept saying is this is for dual screen PCs and foldables. It's for new stuff. It only is going to work on new hardware.
That's really interesting.
We're not bringing it to the old hardware. They made that point like several times. Like, that's not how we're going to do
that. That could be artificial too, though. That could be them saying we got to move everybody forward. Easiest way to do that, as it always has been in the Windows world, is new hardware.
Yeah. It also could be, even when we do bring it to other form factors like clamshells and traditional laptops, they'll have to have this new kind of processor or processor architecture for it to work.
That's right. Right. That's what I'm wondering. This was not clear. It wasn't stated at all. I mean, I have no idea, but it would make sense that this first gen of dual screen devices would require this new type of processor.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can. I mean, if the only way you can buy this
containers now with our existing hardware and software. I mean,
yeah, but this is just a new implementation. I mean, Windows has never been fully containerized like this. I honestly think the other big part here is like, let's limit the audience a little bit because we're not really sure how this is going to work. you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
there will be improvements, as more and more people use it, as feedback comes in, et
Is
cetera.
the main point so they can run 32-bit software? No.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, I wouldn't say 32-bit.
Because that's funny to
32
say that.
No, 32 or 64-bit. So classic Windows apps.
But that's funny because they're also saying, but it's not going to be on classic Windows machines.
Right.
No, right, but it's called Windows something, right? So
they have to.
They've
Right.
had this. They've had this problem in the past,
right?
Where they had not only did they call these things Windows, but it looked identical to Windows, and it's a bad experience when you can't run the apps you expect to run on something that looks exactly like Windows. So this time around, it doesn't look exactly like Windows, but it will run those apps. It may run them a little slowly, we'll see, but it will run all of them. So ARM, the deal was, well, running traditional apps slowly is better than not running them at all. But the problem with ARM is you can't run the 64-bit apps, and all the best apps are pretty much 4-bit these days. This time around, you'll be able to do 64-bit apps. They may run slowly. Hopefully, that will improve over time. But they will run for the most part. Again, not 100%, but I think this is. I feel like this is going to solve the problem. Much like I'm sure Volkswagen thought the clean diesel thing was going to solve the problem, but I'm sure they'll get it there.
This is the blue tech.
I'm sure Volkswagen got it. Yeah.
So the other part, like when we said the two biggest surprises. So my other big surprise, besides all apps are containerized, was they did start talking a little bit about the security model for this.
Yeah.
And they kept mentioning reputation mode. And this was something that Kevin Gallo had kind of hinted about at Build last year. He said, we don't need everything to go through the store, right? Like we need a way for users to be able to trust our apps. And if you're downloading them, we need you to be able to say, I know this is not full of, malware and security problems. So they started talking about reputation circle of trust. And they said the idea started with the 10S experience. They know that didn't work. Yeah. But the idea they want to get to is all apps will be signed, right? And then somehow MSIX, that packaging mechanism that they have.
This is the trust mechanism, is MSIX.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think this is me kind of going out on a limb based on watching some of those videos. I think it's going to be like MSIX combined with Device Guard, which is one of their capabilities in Windows 10 Enterprise today, and maybe also in Pro. And if you combine those two things, then you have this level of trust where they went out and actually said this week, you won't need antivirus software because any app you download, you'll be able to trust it to that extent.
So there are developers in the audience who will either nod their head knowingly or shake their head sadly when I say this. But
exactly.
Based on, they've been working on stuff like this for a while. So one of the things that happened with .NET was this notion that you could package apps and I forget what it was called, but like the .NET Pad app that I wrote is packaged using whatever this .NET packaging technology is, and you have to get it signed so that it can be published to the internet, which I haven't done yet, and that is supposed to establish some level of trust. And of course, there's probably not much trust associated with it, but it's better than unknown publisher, which is what it looks like now.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think I think what you're saying is actually pretty smart and true, because this is the big question. They're going to let apps that were previously available only through the store that are apparently, supposedly vetted by Microsoft, et cetera, but we want to be able to deliver them reliably and securely and with trust over the internet. How does that look, or how does that work? Yep. And I think you're right. I think MSIX is the solution.
I do too. They didn't come out and state that plainly, but they were saying, we know that apps are going to come to people not necessarily through the store. Yeah. Like the store will still be there for people who want to get apps through the store and for us to promote apps in the store. But you know what? That's not how most people are going to get apps, especially when 32 apps, right? That's not how they're going to do it. But they need a way, if they start to go to download an app, that they can say, I know I can put this on the machine without worrying that it's going to destroy everything, right? And they didn't say they're doing that with a sandbox, right?
No. I think the trust model has to be based in part on some kind of a reputation scheme too, right? There's if you're Adobe, or maybe Adobe's not a great example. If you're Apple or Mozilla or whatever, you're anything that you put up on the internet by default would probably be trusted, you know. But if you're Bob Smith or whatever, or me, probably not by default.
Right. You know, the one thing we kind of backed into this, we started with like the nitty gritty of the architecture and all that, containers and VMs and blah. But, you know, the thing that they started the presentation out at the very beginning yesterday is why you would want to run 10X. And they covered all those things that they talked about last summer. Remember, they did this really obscure blog post around the time of Computex, and they said, this is what a modern OS is.
Yeah.
And they were like, no WinRot, you know, secure by design.
When that came out, we said, it sounds like you're talking about something that isn't Windows.
Yeah.
And they got really defensive about that. And they're like, well, I know. But this post never once had, I don't think even said the word Windows in it. Or Windows. It
never said Windows Core. It never said Windows Core OS.
Well, of course. I mean, they were playing it. God knows why they put that up at the time. But
yeah. I mean, but this is what this is, right? And they were talking about, we know people want better battery life. We know people want better performance at the same time as better battery life. We know people don't want to have the WinRot thing keep happening. So this is our solution. Yeah. It's going to be this operating system. This is how this is going to work.
If you go back to Windows 8 and Windows RT, this was the same conversation. If you went back to, you know, Windows 10, again, and UWP, same conversation. Windows 10S, same conversation. You know, Windows 10, Windows 10 and ARM, I don't know. But, battery life was about battery life. I mean, so, they've been working on this for a while. I don't know. And we should also, simpler new user interface. And added to the complexity of having two screens, which is a little strange, right? Because there are some new window management issues that occur when you have dual displays, and you have traditional apps that may not understand that exists, and that you know might literally have content right under the seam. When I don't know if it's called maximizing, but let's say maximize across the two displays, et cetera. So there's going to be that to deal with as well, but. It's interesting. Yeah. I like the look of it is nice. It's kind of flat and clean. There's new icons, et cetera. It's
I love the launcher UI where you know, so all your apps that you just recently opened and documents you're working on, they're all right there, which I love.
What does that remind you of, by the way?
Yeah, Office.com,
the Office thing, right?
The Office app.
Exactly. Yeah. So this consolidation of it's kind of the logical. Continuation of the work that started, I guess, with the first start menu in Windows 95. You know, this kind of document-centric UI where it's a single interface that combines apps and documents. It's nice.
You know, this is a random but sort of related aside. Since I moved completely to Windows 10, you know what the biggest issue I have is finding my documents. I can never find where I put anything because sometimes it automatically saves it to OneDrive. Sometimes it automatically saves it to my PC, and I'm not sure why. Downloads, I'm like, is it downloading to OneDrive? Is it downloading to my PC?
Yeah.
And so,
okay.
So you know what? So for normal people, I think this idea of all your documents that you recently had open or in a place you can find them really quickly is awesome because otherwise, I can't find mine. Can't find them.
I think that. So the problem with Windows 10 is the problem with Windows in a nutshell. It's old and new, you know?
Right.
The first time you take a screenshot in Windows 10, it's like, hey, do you want to save those to OneDrive? And you're like,
I know.
I don't know. You know,
do
if
I?
you say no, do you want to, how do you go? You can, but how do you find it where you change it later? Or the thing you're talking about, they have this notion of known folders and desktop and documents and pictures probably are, you could have those synced across OneDrive, you know, and and maybe you should. But I think with this system, they're moving more toward that as the default now. You could probably circumvent it if you had to and save stuff locally on the desktop. But I suspect what they want the thing you're talking about is where they want to be. Yeah. And they have a lot of users that, you know, like you had a Windows 7 PC, you upgraded it to Windows 10. Some of that stuff, first time you save something from Photoshop, where does it save? In the documents folder. It's weird.
Yeah.
You know, if you save a screenshot by default, it goes to the pictures folder. Or maybe it doesn't because maybe you hooked it up through OneDrive. And it's all these different permutations.
Yeah. And I also have two different accounts, Microsoft accounts that I use on the same machine. So that makes it even more confusing, right? It's like, which one did I open it with? And then where did it save? Because that saves in a different place than it does on my other account, right?
Right.
So that's why I love this new UI idea. I think it's perfect because the thing you don't want to be doing, since they're so attuned to productivity, you don't want to waste so much time looking for where you just had a document that you were using 5 minutes ago. Right.
But if I wanted to choose between FAT32 and NTFS and XFAT on the disk, I mean, I could still do that, right? I mean, like, I think
exactly.
there's the old world kind of complexity stuff, and then this new mobile world where we're trying to be, simpler and more efficient and safer and all, and it's a transition.
That also makes me think about, we're just assuming 10X is the future of Windows, and this is eventually going to be Windows, right? But is it? Because enterprises aren't going to want this the way it is, right? They want the complexity, like you're just joking about, right? And they need features that aren't necessarily going to be in this, right?
No, I don't. So actually, I think this. I do think that there's a chance that this becomes Windows. I don't mean to say that definitively, like obviously this is what's happening.
Yeah.
I believe that that's what's happening. But this is just like the conversation we just had. There is this complexity. It doesn't go away just because we have Windows 10X.
Right.
But it does pretty much go away for most users. You could probably screw around in the system and change things if you want to do.
Yeah.
But from the perspective of IT or an enterprise or whatever, they're still going to have policy that will allow them to control how things happen. So if they want things saved to a certain network share by default or whatever, that will still be a policy they can do. So I think this kind of provides the best of both worlds. That thing that you just mentioned is an excellent example of how the complexity of Windows gets in the way for normal people because there are all these different ways of doing things. Yeah. And now that they're kind of not really enforcing, but defaulting to this much simpler UI and way of doing things, and most people will just do it. And you don't think about where files are. Right. Well, you can, but on your Android phone or your iOS device or whatever. I mean, if you screw around with that if you want to, but maybe that's the point. Most people don't. They don't worry about it. When they open that Word or whatever app they're using, they have access to their documents. They don't really care where it is, right? As long as they go to their other device and do the same thing, and it's still there.
So, do you think there will be different SKUs of 10X, like 10X Enterprise?
If I know Microsoft, like I know Microsoft, of course.
I know.
And in the short term, look, it's not going to replace Windows tomorrow, right? So if you are a developer or a gamer and you have particular hardware needs, et cetera, you're going to want the power that's going to come from these traditional Intel processors and the high-end systems, et cetera. And you might want the complexity of Windows. Yeah. We'll see. But I think it evolves. I think I do believe they want to get it there. And I believe that this one has a chance to make it happen. Whereas, when you look at RT or S mode or ARM, you're like, well, I see what you're doing. Like, I get it. It's just, but it's not really, it's a step in this direction. I feel like this one has the chance to work. If that makes sense.
That's as positive as we're going to get you to be. So let's go with it.
I really like it. I
know you do. I can tell you do.
Why the focus on dual screens? That seems odd to me.
Yeah.
I think this is
because the market hasn't even shown that people want dual screens.
I honestly think this is a deliberate attempt to limit the audience for this first release because it's not going to be ready yet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so here's something. It's like it's like when the magician does something and they're really doing something over here, but you're not paying attention.
Redirection.
Redirecting.
Because look, I mean, you just mentioned the Samsung event. Samsung has 2 devices now that have folding displays. Microsoft's talking about this mechanical hinge thing with a seam in the middle. It's like something out of the 1800s, like a steampunk device. Like this is clearly not the future of computing. But that doesn't mean that some kind of system where, we get all these weird arguments with dual screen versus, one screen, whatever. Right. If I could take the screen I'm looking at now and fold it in half and carry it with me, I guess you could argue it's a dual screen or, in that case, a folding screen device. I mean, it accomplishes the same thing. I think they're building the stuff into Windows for some future where we'll have this versatility. Just like you could buy a laptop today or a convertible PC that has 4 usage modes or whatever it is. You can flip it around. It's a tablet. This will be another usage mode where you can kind of open it up and it's, it will be 2 screens at first and eventually be 1 screen. It's just a way to get. It's a step. Yeah. It's just a step to get to the future. I think.
You're going to do a Windows 10X field guide, are you?
Yeah, but I have a plan. Do you guys ever watch Blackadder? You know, a cunning plan.
Yeah. Cunning plan.
Like the apes. There were apes in the Andes that figured this out years ago. I was thinking. So I've been doing these programming projects, and I'm going to do a WPF app soon. But I'm thinking I'm going to do a UWP app that will be the book in app form, and that it will flow to these dual screen devices properly. So you'll never have a column of text that's on the seam. I thought that'd be kind of a cool way to combine these two things into one thing.
Yeah.
So I'll do like.
So that's your next developer project?
No, it's not the next one. It's like the next one. But it's coming. Cool. I think that's my idea.
Yeah. I think that's good. You know, I was thinking about the Kindle, right? Because people always have complained there's no Windows 10 Kindle app. But what if you can just take a UWP version of Kindle and flow it onto the dual screen, and then it becomes your Kindle?
It bugs me that Amazon has never done this.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it, by the way, if you're looking for a Windows 10 Kindle app, look at their Cloud Reader app. It's actually
as long as you're online.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a thought. Like you're kind of talking about, you know, if you have something that can open like a book, why not use it that way? Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Nice. I think it's cool.
I'll give it a shot. Yeah. Speaking
and you're
of
such
which,
a glutton for punishment. You're doing another book.
Well, yes, but I mean, I'm not going to duplicate what I did in the Windows 10 field guide. I'm not going to describe each app, separately. If you want to know that stuff, you can buy the other book. But it will just focus. This will be a small book, but I think it'd be nice for an app. I mean, it'll be like a normal book version, but I think it'll be cool for an app because it will let me experiment with these new SDKs and stuff. So I'm kind of curious about how that works. Plus, UWP is the future, as I've often said.
Yeah, you have. I've heard you say that many times.
All right, let's move
opposed to PWA.
But the other big part of this event that they had was Android and dual screen experiences that are kind of cross-platform. And I was curious how or if they were going to approach that. Right, so I sort of wondered if web app development was going to be their solution. And they do have a web app component where they're talking about creating standards for the web that would work across browsers so they could flow correctly across multiple screens, et cetera. That's kind of neat. And if you're familiar with the way that, not the current version of Edge, but the old version of Edge worked in their reading mode, it would actually pan, I guess, horizontally, right? So the article would have columns. And the way I kind of take it is it would work a little bit like that, where the columns, you'd make sure the columns were always visible and never hidden by the seam. I think that's kind of interesting. But the other bit was Xamarin, right? Mm-hmm. And Xamarin Forums, the original, as I understand it, I'm not a Xamarin guy, but I believe the original version of Xamarin was designed so you could create one app that ran on Windows Phone, Android, and iOS. And so you'd have a solution. It was really 3 different projects, and then probably a shared project that had shared code. And but now they're doing it for Windows 10X, I should say. So you could create a single app now soon in Xamarin that would run across 10X or Android with dual screen support. Yep. That's kind of interesting, and maybe that's what I want for the book. I'll look at that too. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I agree. I was wondering how much the Duo and Android would play into this event, even though we knew it was mostly about 10X. And they did update the Duo emulator and SDK yesterday. But
for Mac and Linux.
Yeah. To me, when I think about these two things, I think of them as more similar than different, despite the different operating systems underneath, because they look somewhat alike in terms of the user experience. And I think the gestures and the way you interact with them, they're going to make sure that's similar so that you talk about this as dual screen experiences and you don't say, here's what you have to do for Windows and here's what you have to do for Android. Like they don't want that to be the dichotomy, right?
There is potentially crossover too, because if people or developers do use Xamarin to create their apps, you could literally have the same app that would run on both platforms, even though they're completely different. Yep. And if web developers do the same, you'll have web apps that would work correctly and the same across the two platforms. I mean, that should be how the web works all the time. But that's interesting. It's not complete.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Duo was never going to run Win32 apps. That's not the point. But it's, I mean, for a lot of the core stuff, I mean, Microsoft, well, actually, it's different, isn't it? They were showing off the Mail and Calendar app from Windows 10, which is what you're going to get in Windows 10X. And if you're running the Duo, you get Outlook Mobile, which to me is the superior app. Maybe that will change.
Yeah. You know, I've seen a lot of people say this, and I'm curious if you think this is the case. A lot of people say when they saw 10X and they started digging into it and looking at like the File Explorer in it and all, if they think Microsoft is thinking of it as a mobile platform first and foremost, right? And that they're repurposing a lot of what they built around the time of Windows Phone, because the devices are mobile tablets. Like mobility is kind of the first thing that you use them for.
I always thought Windows Phone would have been a great tablet OS, and that when you think about those, what do they call them? The panoramic experiences on a phone screen, you could only see part of it at a time. But when you went to a tablet, you would could potentially see the whole panorama at once. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea. They never did it, of course. But I look at it. What I see when I use this is Windows 10. I don't see Windows Phone. The UWP File Explorer is the UWP File Explorer you can find for Windows 10 if you want it. I mean, I'm sure there's some crossover, but it is those Windows 10 apps, and so it's the movies and TV app, the the Mail app, the Calendar app, the People app, et cetera. It's all this, it's all that stuff. It's the UWP app. So, I mean, I get, arguably that stuff is it is, there were Windows mobile equivalents, so it's kind of the modern version of what was Windows Phone, I guess.
Let's take a break. Then let's talk about the Surface Nuo and Dio.
Yep. Holy dollar.
Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley. We're talking about Microsoft. We'll do more of that in a second. Our show today, as always, brought to you literally by CacheFly, our CDN, our Content Delivery Network. CacheFly's been delivering innovative content since 1999. We've been using it since 2006, 2007. And if you get your podcast fast, you can thank CacheFly. CacheFly's servers are all over the world. By moving our content to the edge, closer to you, you get it faster. Plus, you get 100%. We get 100% SLA. That means you're always going to get your data. CacheFly's just introduced something I really like, 100% Cache Shield. With this new feature, you're going to get a huge reduction in data transfer fees with AWS's S3 and other cloud storage origins by increasing your cache hit ratio to 100%. I guess I better explain that. So the idea, as I mentioned, is that there's servers all over the world. We have a central source of the shows. When people start downloading the show, initially that server that you hit has to download it from our source, and then it's got it, right? And then from then on, you'll be downloading it from that server. So the first people that download the show in any region are going to get it from us, in effect, and it's going to be a little bit slower. But this, with 100% Cache Shield, your data and content will always be closer to your customers, not going through the traffic of other companies. You can buy as much space as you want. Your data is fetched from the 100% Cache Shield rather than from your origin. So in effect, before your customers ask for the content, it's put out on those cached servers. Shielding reduces your origin spend by thousands per month. I love that too, guaranteeing no cache misses. A cache miss is bad for you. It means they end up on your server, downloading it from your site and costing you money directly. With 100% Cache Shield, you never get hit locally. You save yourself a lot of money, and your customers love it because they're always getting it super fast. Shielding reduces your origin spend by thousands a month. It'll also improve your download speeds. No more buffering, right? Guaranteed availability with the highest quality of service. You can easily and reliably scale your video streaming. Yes, this works with streaming too. That's a big part of this, right? So you can get to global audiences anywhere, any size. You're there nearby. Great for gaming. You get hyper-fast download speeds, low latency, a scalable solution for gaming. It's almost really overkill for podcasts, but we're using it and I love it. Why not, right? Your podcast will be delivered quickly and reliable, no delays, no timeouts, and you'll get lightning fast. Your customers will get lightning fast digital download speeds for large digital files no matter where they are. CacheFly's global throughput performance dominance ensures any cache misses are delivered 5 times faster than if they came from you. See, they're kind of, you get the idea. You know what? If you want to know more, you go to twit.cachefly.com. In fact, you could bring your current CDN bill and your usage trends, and they can show you how they can save you up to 20% plus so much more. CacheFly. Go to twit.cachefly.com. No heavy pressure, just the information you need to make the right choice for you and for your customers. Twit.cachefly.com. Thank you, CacheFly, for 10 years plus. We send out petabytes of data every single month to you, our listeners and viewers, petabytes. And honestly, if that had all come from our origin, not only would you have to wait a lot longer, it would cost us a lot more. So CacheFly really, really saves us. All right, let's talk about dual screens, the Neo and the Duo. Now, I have to say, folding screens are suddenly kind of back on the map. Galaxy Fold was such a flop last year that I think a lot of people said, well, forget that. But then there was a lot of attention for the Moto Razr, which was a different idea. Instead of opening to tablet size, it opens to phone size. It's a little pocket square. And now it's too bad they waited so long, Motorola, because 1 week later, Samsung announces the Z Flip, which even though it's $1,400, it's still $100 less than the Motorola. And I have to say,
I think it looks cool.
I'm going to order it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to try to have it by this weekend. I'll have it by the next.
How much is it?
$13.98.
It's expensive. Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because the technology is so complicated. The good news is, the Moto Razr, which is $100 more, has a kind of weak processor. This thing at least has an 855 Snapdragon. I mean, it's got all of the kind of flagship phone.
I think
stuff
and there's some cool stuff. Samsung has a way of, they obviously work with Google like any other
Google
Android
was on
partner.
stage. They, last year Samsung didn't use the word Android. This year,
but
Google was
they're
on
building
stage
support for this right into Android, right? So this folding screen thing, and
That's
there's
right.
some cool little,
That's right.
I kind of ripped on Microsoft a bit when they had that October announcement because I didn't feel like they justified the dual screen support. But then Samsung's like, look, you can put the thing down, you can sit it up, you can take a selfie with it,
like a little mini tiny,
like
little
a
Smurf laptop.
Yeah,
and when you use
yes, exactly.
And there's right now. There's only 2 apps that support it. Google Duo, which is their FaceTime phone calling thing. But that's cool because the camera could be there.
Put it on the table, you can chat with somebody.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
And you can, even the hinge is stiff enough that you can tilt it back and forth. It's kind of like your laptop. And then YouTube, apparently, you can watch the video and the comments. Who cares? But anyway.
Well, but
you can watch the chat.
Cool.
You could, you know what? I'd be interested to see if we can make it work with a Twitch stream, so that the video's there and the chat's below it. That would be awesome.
It's only a matter of time before you're doing a podcast with somebody, and that's how they're doing the show.
From the Flip, I agree with you. Well, I'm going to buy it so you don't have to. I mean, I'll try it out and let you know if there's issues.
Look, like everything else in life, I mean, this thing will improve over time. The screen technology will get better. The prices will come down. More companies will do it. But
Samsung has the advantage of having flopped a year ago.
If that's an advantage, they do it about every other year.
But I mean, they've had a chance to kind of perfect it, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. They have experience with it. I'm sure.
So we'll see. We'll see. I've already committed. I'm all in on it.
Oh, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Try it.
And I can't wait to get a Duo and a Neo, to be honest.
Yeah.
Even though they're not a phone. It's not a phone.
I got to be honest. Like I am really looking forward to 10X on a traditional laptop form factor, one screen.
Yep.
I think about how I use a computer, the types of apps I run, how I switch between them, and it would be fine. Like that UI would not get in the way. It wouldn't. Well, I can't say this definitively. I don't think it would be any less efficient. And if that thing is itself more efficient, from a hardware power management perspective, great.
Do you run apps in Windows though? Because it doesn't run apps in Windows. You have to run full screen.
Of course I do. Well, yeah, no, of course I do. But on a 13-inch laptop, I run almost everything full screen.
Yeah, me too. So yeah.
Yeah, the big change there is like on a system like this, I use the desktop for scratch work. So if If I'm working on a document, that's on the desktop. If there are graphics associated with it, that's on a desktop. And if I'm posting it to the web, I'll drag them over, to the web window to get them up to the server. So on a full screen computer like a 13-inch laptop, I just open a File Explorer window with the desktop view over, so I can drag it over. So yeah, it would work fine. I never really switched to that full screen Windows 8 snap mode thing.
No, me neither.
Never really. I tried.
I could never snap. I couldn't snap. I tried.
I would never snap on this display. Like I would never do that. But I do on laptops sometimes. Yeah.
You do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we show? I put a link into the video of one of Microsoft's videos of a woman using the Surface Neo.
Before we do this, by the way, I based on the tone of the note, you seem a little down on this. Is that correct?
I want you to look at this video and everything. When I looked at it, I'm like, who actually uses a PC the way this person is using it? Because
is this a Microsoft video? Whose is this?
It is. It's a Microsoft video that the Walking Cat posted.
I'm a freelance motion graphics designer. I travel a lot and I get inspiration by the cities I visit. I like PixArt because it's really easy to edit pictures and to create awesome graphics. At home, I work on 2 screens. What I love about the Surface Neo is that now
she's got a Neo.
Tools with
that's
bigger than I thought it would be.
9 inches each screen.
Yeah, it's like a little, it's almost a laptop.
PixArt is the world's largest social editing platform. We have 150 million monthly active users around the world. Last year, we were the 14th most downloaded app worldwide. From digital advertising agencies to
man, I'm jealous. These guys all have these cool-looking things.
I think they had them for 7 minutes on one day and they were taken
Me
away.
too.
I don't think they had them.
It was a lot easier than we thought.
So there's no keyboard. It's just it's like 2 iPads taped together.
Hold on.
What?
There's a keyboard coming.
Settings and tools. I think PixArt users would love dual
The music's going to get it pulled? Is it real music? This isn't going to get it pulled. This is a Microsoft thing.
It is.
Having continuous access to your image during the whole editing experience, you can see the magic happening in front of your eyes.
The partnership with Microsoft has been incredibly collaborative from the start. The Surface Neo definitely allows us to better empower our users and use PixArt more quickly and more powerfully.
By the way, that was a Microsoft branded pen she was using.
It's powerful and mobile.
Oh, they didn't show the keyboard.
Oh, they didn't.
So there was one.
So if you look at the keyboard on your little Surface Go, if you imagine that clipped onto the front of the bottom screen, so there's no wrist rest. The keyboard's at the front.
Oh, that's right. They showed that at the event. I remember that.
They did. Yeah.
So where is it? It's hiding inside?
No, it's
going to be in a separate accessory. I'm sure they're going to charge like $150 or something for it. Like it won't be free. Yeah. It won't be free, will it?
Really? Really? Okay. They'll charge whatever it's worth. Why do you have to be? Why do you have to be that way?
So. Yeah. No. So my point about that video is because I watched it a few times. Like she's using this in postures that no normal person would ever do, right? Like she's writing on it while it's in like a laptop mode. She grabs the back
of the screen and she writes on the top screen.
Right?
That's one of the earliest things.
But she has to hold it up with her hand because you can't actually write on it and push against it or it'll flatten and fall down, right? So I'm like, Look, it's a hard form factor. 2 9-inch glass screens, they make sense as a book, but when you put them down on you never use it on your lap, but you could put it down on a table, right? But then how do you like interact with the thing?
Yeah.
Right?
I still think they're struggling to justify why there are 2 screens, beyond the fact that it's kind of cool looking. They can do it.
That's what I mean.
It reminds me of the HoloLens thing where they're like, my God, we came up with this really cool thing.
Yeah.
Would somebody please write an app that shows why this thing is so cool? They're kind of struggling to show, some kind of a mainstream.
Why you would need 2 screens, right?
And it can't just be one app. There has to be like a bunch of examples where you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the examples they showed in the event, like they showed, okay, look at this. You could have your email over here. And when you open one of the messages, it's on the other screen. But I'm like, well, that's how I use my email now, right? Like when I use the mail app that's in Windows 10, I have it like full screen and I have my list of email over here and it just opens over here. So why do I need two screens?
And maybe people don't know this, but the mail app in Windows 10 supports a snap mode where you can have two different windows. You snap them, and one of them is the main window for the whole application, and the other one is a particular email. And what that allows you to do is have two email messages side by side, or maybe even the same one, but you're quoting something and you want to make sure you're getting what they said right. Yeah. This is everything they showed for this two-screen thing is very clearly a very basic evolution of what's already possible today in Windows 10.
And, you know, I'm willing to suspend disbelief and say maybe there will be companies who come up with reasons that you're like, that's why I want two screens, right? Maybe. But the way she was holding this thing and like holding it up like this so she could write on the top screen, I'm like, so nobody's going to do that, right? Like if you're going to write, you're going to write on the screen that's flat on the table and have the other screen be something you're reading.
Yeah, and
right?
she does do that as well in the video.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought it was like, okay, you want to show people doing normal interactions and making it cool that you would take this with you, but everything they showed, I'm like, not so much.
I think look, I don't. How do I say this? You know, we have modern laptops or convertible PCs like these X360 type devices like HP has. I suspect that most people just use them as a laptop most of the time.
Right.
The fact that they have the versatility to contort into other form factors is great. It's a nice capability. Even if someone never thought they might use it as a tablet, they'll be stuck in a coach airline seat, and maybe that's the only way you can watch a movie. At least it's there. It's nice. The problem with this video or with this device, I guess, is it seems like the primary form factor here is just the screens.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't see much of a future for a Windows-based consumption-only device, or maybe a consumption-first device, or however you want to say that. Right. I think the thing that has worked for Windows is productivity first, and that means that the keyboard and the pointing, the touchpad or whatever you're using, is kind of front and center all the time, or most of the time. I don't know. Yep. Yeah, obviously they're trying something new here, but
they were trying to show it not being a consumption device, right? They were showing it as a creator's device. That's what they were trying to show you.
Those kind of apps. I mean, that's you're basically running a smartphone app on this device. It's a UWP app, obviously, like a store app.
Right.
Big touch targets, touch friendly. She was using a pen for some reason, but you could just use your fingers. But again, that's great. That's fine. Those things exist today. Why is that any better than just using a tablet?
Right.
I guess the screen is angled up at the top, and maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not even bringing up lappability. I'm just talking about usability. And obviously, that is not lappable. It's two 9-inch glass screens hinged together, right? Like, unless your lap is a midget troll lap. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
That is a weird thing about that form factor. It's
right. It is. Yeah. Like using it as a book. You don't use an
iPad ever?
Me? No, I've used one once, but no.
Because it's the same problem. In fact, this is really like two iPads.
People are like, look, you can hold this thing in front of you like a book, like it's like a V thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you have both sides of the page or whatever. Why is that advantageous? I mean, when you have a tablet or a phone screen, you have one page. You're not reading two pages at the same time. I mean, you're just, you swipe through it. Like, isn't that the more natural?
I feel it's like
there's this big thing with computer UI where in the beginning it always emulates real world objects. Like people would write book apps and there would be like a page flip animation, or you could bookmark a page and it would actually like dog ear it or something, because that's the way it works in the real world. But I think over time, like those things evolve to be truer to the form factor, and it becomes more efficient because it's not like the, like one of the problems with the book is like you fumble it on the bus and drop it and you lost your page.
That's the big problem.
We're going to emulate that. Like you throw the book, you throw the thing in the air and catch it. It like randomly goes to a different page. I mean, like, why can't it just be better?
I know. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you'll never lose your place on a Duo.
I lose my place on iPads all the time, actually, because they're so sensitive. I'm like gorilla hand it, and it, it's fast
I guess,
forwards.
On my Kindle, same thing.
Yeah.
So the thing that we saw was the Neo. The Duo is the phone.
Right.
Do you have the same complaints about that? No, because it's a phone.
It's a phone.
Well, not really, but
it's a big phone.
I don't remember if this was on the show, but I showed my wife the Samsung Flex, and I was like, I think you might like this, the
Z Flip,
and she did. The Z Flip, sorry. Yeah. And what she said was, but actually, what I really want is a phone where it's like, it's a phone you can open it, and you have two screens.
Not too bad nobody makes that.
And I was like, well, I got good news for you. They're going to make that too. But of course, we're middle aged, so our eyesight is going, and what I'm looking for is like more screen real estate, so I can see more. And it's for reading, maybe not for movies because of the scene, but I guess if there's no scene for movies, for maps, in the world, that would be advantageous for sure. I mean, or in the car, you ever try to look at a phone screen while you're driving? That's what should be illegal. Navigating with the Google Maps on a 5-inch screen if you're over 50, like that's like a felony, I don't know.
No, so you have the video. Well, so there was a guy who said he found a guy on the air train in Vancouver, Canada, right? Who had the Surface Duo, and he discreetly took some pictures of him.
Clearly just dicking around with the device. Like
I know.
He was just, like that picture you can see, it's his, I think that's the Mail app on the right, or Outlook, and just the home screen, obviously, on the left. But, all the apps he's using are showing, actually, if you go to the top, Leo, I think, to the top of the article, sorry. Yeah, there's a link to the video. And, he's clearly just kind of screwing around with it,
Yeah. He's just trying out different postures and different ways of accessing stuff. Yep. And so, there's got to be hardware out in the wild at this point.
If you scroll
Maybe he's
forward,
a Microsoft employee.
It eventually turns into a video. Right now it's just a couple of still photos, but there is a video.
Okay. Yeah. It's nice. I would like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind this.
The idea of it. I mean, I'd like it better if there wasn't a seam, frankly.
That's weird when you're turning it sideways like that.
Yeah.
When you scroll at the bottom, does it go up?
It treats it as one screen.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it folds all the way over. It's a 2-in-1 as well. So he's. Of
course, now you got your grubby fingers on the back screen there.
Right. We're all used to grubby fingers now.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's playing a game.
I like digital devices reminding me of how greasy my skin is all the time. It's nice.
I can't see. It's interesting that he is in public doing this. I mean, an Apple employee would never do this. They'd have some sort of weird case on it. I guess Microsoft doesn't mind. Is he presumably?
I guess they feel like they've shown it in public, and some people have gotten to hold it and do things.
Yeah, that's true, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of a nice little demo we got here on the train.
Yeah.
I think the guy is kind of aware that he's being. Oh, there you go.
Me too. Yeah. I think he is too.
I think so too.
Let me show you some features.
But he's also clearly he's screwing around. He's not.
Yeah.
Someone on the bus or whatever this is, the train, would just. They'd be reading an app. They would be playing a game. He's just going from thing to thing.
Clearly Seattle. Notice the giant umbrella.
Yeah.
Vancouver.
Oh, yep. Vancouver. Okay.
Well,
same weather.
Same weather pattern.
Yeah. So
I
it's
would
out
buy
there.
that. I know I'm sounding like an idiot. I'm buying all this stuff, but I would.
I'm afraid to buy another Microsoft phone, but that to me looks like more of a practical form factor than the Neo.
Yeah. I've always thought that Microsoft should make a phone. An Android phone. I mean, by the way, I'm using that new Microsoft launcher on the Huawei phone, which has a terrible default launcher. It's beautiful. It is horribly incomplete. Like the preview version is missing features, but it's gorgeous. Like it's really nice. Like they have some good UX ideas.
Yeah, it's growing on me. Like now that I put in now that I've signed in and I can see my calendar items, like I don't care about the news feed and all that stuff. Like I want it to be my apps.
Yeah, but you can do that,
services.
right? You can just you can show your calendar over there, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, you can talk me into it. I'll try it on my new Samsung Z Flip.
Yeah,
no, you're not going to try it on that.
Try it.
No, I think you have to use the launcher. I would guess you'd want to use the launcher it came with, presumably.
Although, by the way, eventually, and not, it's not going to be that long. The Microsoft launcher will support that because they're already doing the dual screen thing. Right. That's the point of it.
And it is also in the OS. Android has it. So
yeah, well, that's where it comes from, by the way. Yeah. And that was the thing. This is at the end of the notes, but I have a thing about, Microsoft uses this term partner. We're partnering with Samsung. We're partnering with Google. What does that mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything. They literally are just like any other Android OEM.
Yes. Yeah, we're partnering.
And they're not like the SDK. The SDK that Microsoft has for Duo should be in quotes. It's like, go look at what the Google's doing over there in the SDK because they already support it in Android. Like they're just supporting. Yeah. They're just making
Android SDK, right?
It's not even Android 11. It's Android 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just supporting what Google already does.
Yeah.
Which in a way is what they should do.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. And they might have some feedback and some ability to help determine what happens in the next version too. I'm sure that's part of it. But I mean, that's what everybody does. I mean, if you're Samsung or Huawei or any of those companies, they're all doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no! Now we're getting serious. Not only has Mobile World Congress been canceled, but I've just received word Showstoppers has been canceled as well. So
Showstoppers at Mobile World Congress.
At Mobile World Congress.
It's over now.
No
that's official.
No fancy jamon iberico. No chocolate fountain. Oh, woe is me! Woe is me! Hey, Microsoft did the right thing.
Yep. How long did that take, by the way? How long did that last?
I knew it would, though.
About 2 weeks.
I knew it would. There's no way they were going to go ahead with this. Tell us about the story. It's the Bing jacking story.
Right. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about how Microsoft had this plan where if you were an Office 365 Pro Plus user, they were going to deliver an extension to you if you were using Chrome that would install the Microsoft Search and Bing application and also change your search engine default to Bing. So, of course, admins and users everywhere were outraged and claimed they were planning to hijack Chrome, which is correct. That is what they were going to do. And now, 2 weeks later, Microsoft has said, based on customer feedback, guess what? We're not going to do that. We're not going to force the extension on people through Office 365 Pro Plus.
Based on the screams and howls heard throughout IT departments all over the land.
Well, it's funny. They said, a lot of people thought this was a great idea, but
in our marketing department,
nobody thought this was a great idea.
Yeah, I'm like, nobody did, but okay. So instead of forcing it, they're going to make it an opt-in, which is what they should have done all along. So admins who do want to try this can opt in
for admins. Like, to me, that's the key. Like,
it is.
It's not just that they were doing this to users; they were bypassing admins and doing it to users. That's crazy.
I know. That is crazy.
I never understood.
Right. So admins will get this toggle in the administration center. If you want to try this, you turn it on. And if you do turn it on, then Microsoft will push it out to people who are on Active Directory joined devices. And down the line, maybe also on unmanaged devices, but only if they put management tools in place for admins to handle that. So yes, they're doing the right thing. It's weird. It took them 2 weeks to do the right thing. I thought they would have done it quicker.
I would love to be at the marketing meeting where they say, the telemetry is in on the number of admins who turned that feature on. And remember, we thought this would be very popular, and it's actually zero.
Zero,
not zero.
There's one test group at Microsoft that turned it on.
Because it makes Bing your default search and adds a Bing extension.
So if you want to try this Microsoft Search and Bing thing, you have to be signed in and use Bing as your search engine. And if you do that, it's actually kind of cool because when you use search in Bing, it surfaces your company information. So your company documents and all that is allowed to be shared inside the organization. So it is a good idea, but you can't force people to do that. And the reason they were doing it the way they was unless Bing is your default search engine, which it is not for the vast majority of people, you can't try that feature.
Well, I mean, you could try it. You just go to Bing. I mean, in other words, if you just search from the address bar, You would just do a Google search and you wouldn't get those results. But I mean,
right.
I don't know. There are going to be environments that will turn this on for sure. I mean, that's fine, but that's the way it should be. Those people should have that choice.
They should. So a couple people brought up this question, and I don't know the answer, but it does feel in the past several months like Microsoft is doing more and more of this. Like, let's throw this out there and see if people scream. And if they do, then we'll take it back and say, based on customer feedback, we're doing the right thing. Like they did that.
Antitrust regulators are busy with Google, Apple, and Amazon.
They did this with Power Platform. Remember, they were going to go around the admins and let any user inside your org just buy any Power apps they wanted and charge the company later.
Remember when we were dicks and we ruled the world? Maybe that's the mistake we're making.
I don't know. It does feel like a couple people on Twitter, I saw several people say this. They're like, Microsoft's created a lot of goodwill in the past few years, but now they're undoing a lot of that goodwill with these kind of moves. What are you doing, Microsoft?
We don't have this in the notes, but if you have Firefox set as your default browser, they're suggesting Edge now in the start menu.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, could you just not do stuff like that? I mean, come on.
I know.
It literally says something like still using Firefox, like you're some kind of a jerk.
Oh, we talked about that yesterday in Security Now.
Yeah.
Come on, don't do that.
It's really annoying.
But if you have suggestions shut off in Windows 10, do you still see that or not? If you have the operating system.
That's what turns it off. Yeah. If you turn
so if you have that shut off,
I always
you won't see that.
First thing I do is turn that off. Yeah, I don't
Me
want
too.
Suggestions.
Same.
I got a suggestion for you.
I have a suggestion. Turn up suggestions.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad they did the right thing. What is XLOOKUP? Well, that's an Excel. Isn't that Excel?
Yeah. So this is like VLOOKUP is like the successor to VLOOKUP that I believe debuted 35 years ago. I don't use Excel, so I look at the little demo they do, where you kind of, highlight it's a function. It's just a function. It's like literally just a function in Excel. You equals XLOOKUP now, and then you select the cells. 30 years ago, I wrote a book about it.
First, you hit the slash key. And then. Yeah.
If you have the type of PS2 keyboard that has the horizontal or the vertical function keys.
So what is this wasn't in Excel before?
It was, but it was called VLOOKUP.
VLOOKUP. And now it's XLOOKUP.
So it's better. It's one letter higher.
Nice description. I like it.
So it's more than one. It doesn't matter.
What do they call? Go ahead. What do they call that when you get a big customer win? A big, Microsoft calls it partnership.
Partner. Yeah.
IBM is partnering with Slack.
I was surprised that this announcement was not IBM is buying Slack.
Oh yeah, they should.
Maybe that'll be next.
They really should. So
before someone else
IBM, this was a big deal when IBM told people a few years ago that a new employee could choose from a Windows or a Mac machine, and apparently they had good success with the Macs.
So, but what's the equation now? You can choose between Slack and Lotus Notes.
Lotus
or Lotus, whatever.
Yeah.
But no, not what was the?
IBM owns Lotus. No, it was. I know
Notes. What's the Lotus Groove thing? What was that called?
Oh God, yeah.
Groove?
The thing that Ray Ozzie did.
It was
Groove, right?
Groove. Was it called Groove? No,
that was Ray Ozzie's. Yeah. But no, there was also like GroupWise or something. There was a Lotus.
GroupWise.
There was some Lotus group.
Yeah.
Groupware.
Whatever it's called, they're probably still using it at IBM.
Oh,
God bless them.
Oh, man.
So the story was a little weird because it turned out Slack had already announced IBM was their customer last year, and they had already deployed 160,000 seats of Slack. Right. And then I guess Slack or IBM re-announced it and said now it's up to 300-something thousand. And because it affected Slack stock when this happened, because everyone was like, oh, yeah, like buoy up Slack stock.
Hey, we've heard of IBM.
Then Slack had to put out a note, an SEC note saying, well, we already did announce that they were a customer before. So then there's stock. Yeah.
Never mind.
But anyway, it is a big deal. 300,000 seats, right?
Wow.
That's big. Enterprise also, right? So, although we don't know how many of them are free and paid. We don't know that, but
IBM's going to run into a problem where it's like the opposite of not invented here. They're using so many different solutions from so many different companies. You know, like it seems like they're so laser focused on not Microsoft. It seems like, or maybe just like open solutions or whatever. I wonder about that. I'm curious they didn't just buy Slack.
I think Slack is expensive.
Yep.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
totally.
no, I'm sure it is. But
yeah,
at this point, I'm surprised someone hasn't bought them, and it seems
Me
like
too.
IBM would be a reasonable choice.
or Salesforce or somebody like that, right? Like,
Yeah, Google even. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, any one of those companies. Yeah.
How could it be? Have we not done Windows 10 stuff yet?
I know. There's
did
not much
that
to say, really.
Yeah, Windows 10 doesn't matter anymore. We have Windows 10X.
They
10X.
just put out a build though, didn't they, this morning?
Yeah, they did.
Yep.
Actually, they put out two today in a way. So that's not in the notes, but there was a fast ring build, which is 20H2, which has just a single change to the graphics settings part, the graphics part of the settings app, and a preview version of the new calendar app, which is just the same calendar app, really, with themes, I guess.
Yeah.
They also put a 20H1 or a 2004 build. Sorry, geez, how do I even say this? There is a 2004 20H1 is in the slow ring. They released what is technically a cumulative update for a version of Windows that is not shipping publicly, which is always humorous to me. But this is part of their new way of testing things. So this thing was finalized back in December probably, and they've been releasing updates since then, so that when it goes public, it will have been updated through the Insider program at least a few times. That one's just bug fixes, security and bug fixes. Yep. Oh, actually, that one is in the notes. Whatever. And then who cares? I mean, none of this.
I know. It's all very minor stuff at this point with Windows 10.
Yep. Speaking of minor, Microsoft Edge is now available. Is it stable? Am I getting that channel name right? Is that the name of the channel?
Yeah, stable. Yep.
As opposed to fragile?
Well, as opposed to beta and
Canary. Yeah.
I don't know why it says. Because I was look at me being snarky and then not realizing why I was doing it. I'm like, why does it say 6 Windows 10 on it? Oh, I see. If you run Windows 10 on ARM and you don't, it's available and stable now if you want it. So.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of partnerships, Microsoft.
Yeah. So if you watched Samsung's event yesterday, I think we'll all agree that the most exciting part of it was the Microsoft partnership.
What was it? So they just, I didn't even like what they just.
Leo, there's a mobile game called Forza Street.
That was it, huh?
You might have been fooled into believing that this is a new game. It's not. They released it on Windows 10 last year. It's coming to all Android phones and, by the way, all iOS devices on the same day. It's not a Samsung exclusive. I don't know. I don't understand these kinds of announcements. Like we're expanding our partnership with Microsoft, which is like, me, like I'm going to expand my partnership with Microsoft by downloading another app from the Microsoft store. It's not like, what are you talking about? I don't know.
It's a partnership.
So, yeah.
I guess they're not
there
fighting.
Is a Samsung. Cool. No, there is a Samsung Microsoft partnership, right? That existed because before Microsoft announced it was doing the Duo, it did feel like they were all in on Samsung, and they were doing a lot of things with apps for Samsung and
so for 2 months
selling them in their stores, right?
There was look, I mean, they are partners in a sense that Samsung bundles some Microsoft apps on their devices, on some of their devices, I guess. That's cool. This Forza thing is nothing. It is nothing. And like I said earlier, I mean, Microsoft said this again in their Developer Day event. We partnered with Google. Yeah, we signed a license agreement for Android. Now we're partners. It's like when Steve Jobs said, remember, this would have been like Macworld 1998 or something. He's like, yeah, between us and Windows, we have 100% of the PC market. It's like, yeah, you have 3% of that, though. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're not like dividing up the world, like, it just makes it seem like, like Microsoft and Google are on equal footing when it comes to determining the future of dual screen support on Android or something. That it's, I don't know.
Not quite the case.
Not quite. And then, in the past, of course, they've used the word partner with regards to companies
customers.
that, in fact, they're customers. Yeah. Like
exactly.
Walmart rolls out Microsoft 365 at X number of locations. Now they're a partner.
Exactly. Yep.
Really?
Come on.
So they're not paying you for that? Or are you just kind of
I know.
They give you like 5% off on shipping or something? How did this work?
That's one of my biggest pet peeves, the use of partner that way. But
Yep. Very strange.
Let's
Anyway.
tell you what. Why don't you guys smoke them if you got them? And,
Okay.
And we'll take a little break. The back of the book is up next, and we got tips, we got picks, we got beer. But first,
It's not a pick.
It's not a pick. Tip of the week, app of the week, enterprise pick of the week, codename pick of the week. This is a jam-packed back of the book. But first, a word for our sponsors, ZipRecruiter. Hiring, it turns out hiring is not something you do once in a while. It's kind of an ongoing process at most companies. People come and go. And if you're in hiring hell, I know exactly how that feels, because often it's because somebody left and you have 2 weeks, to fill their position, get the new person trained, and so you're kind of in a hurry, and it just can be kind of crazy. We started using ZipRecruiter. We've been using it for a couple of years now, and it's really transformed our hiring process. We're not alone. Gretchen Hebner, who is the founder of a company called Codable, it's an education tech company, and she wanted to hire a game artist, somebody to design game assets for her. Gretchen, smartly, wisely, sometimes you have to go get beat up a little bit before you realize there's a better way. She went right to ZipRecruiter because ZipRecruiter does something pretty amazing. First of all, we've mentioned before, post once on ZipRecruiter, it goes to 100+ job boards, gets your posting out to the widest possible audience. But it's more than just kind of passively putting it out there. ZipRecruiter actually looks through the hundreds of thousands of current resumes because people come to ZipRecruiter to apply for work too, finds people with the right experience, people right for your job, and then says, hey, Gretchen Heber's got a job for you, or Leo's got a job for you. You should apply. Our experience is very similar to Gretchen's. After posting her job on ZipRecruiter, she said she was honestly surprised by how quickly she found qualified applicants. She hired a new game artist in less than 2 weeks. We had the same thing. We get the I quit notice, 2 weeks notice. Oh, man, we got 2 weeks. Lisa's got, she's freaking out because she's got 100 other things on her plate. We got to find somebody. I remember her complaining about it at breakfast. I said, post it, put it on ZipRecruiter. Let's see what happens. Within hours, before lunch, she said, oh, look, I got another one. Oh, this person's great. She was getting 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. We got them in just a few hours. And we hired a great person too, I might add. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for businesses of all sizes. ZipRecruiter, you can try it for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Windows. ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter.com/Windows. ZipRecruiter.com/Windows. ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. Just ask Lisa. She'll tell you. Man, we wouldn't do it without ZipRecruiter these days. Back of the book. Mr. Paul Thurrott has a very special,
We rot.
very, very special tip of the week for us.
Oh, God.
What did they call you in high school?
In high school?
Yeah, like hey, towel rot or something like that.
I had I had friends in all, you have little cliques all around high school, like the jocks and the nerds, and I had friends in all of those groups. It was it was very useful. I didn't get beaten up a lot.
Yeah, that's a way to go. Yeah.
One of my favorite friends was one of those guys who kind of walked around like a Frankenstein. He had like the jean jacket on. He was a big, knucklehead guy. But he used to call me Rock. because he couldn't say Thurrott.
Rock.
So I was, he'd be like, Rock, let's go.
Rock.
And he'd always do whatever he wanted.
Too many
syllables.
Too many syllables. Just rock.
Yeah.
Okay, rock. Time for the tip of the week, Rock.
So I read an article this week about Nielsen had done a study of how many Americans have whatever subscription video services, et cetera, and what the percentages are compared to traditional cable service and all that kind of stuff. And it was really like pro subscription services. And it was like how this was exploding. This was so great for the industry and everything. And I was like, geez, this is clearly written for the industry. And I'm sure it is great for those guys because, you know, one of the problems with subscription services is you forget you have them. And then the bill comes due later. You resubscribe a year later or the next month or whatever it is. You're like, what is this? And so I decided to take a look at, I only wrote about the video one, but I looked at music. I looked at some other stuff too. And we subscribe to a lot of these things, like a lot. And it may be worth reevaluating this from time to time. You know, maybe this is a little late for like a New Year's resolution kind of a thing, but this might be one of those things you should take a look at from time to time. And I'm in a tough spot because, you know, we have kids and one of them doesn't live with us, and, you know, they're all, you know, just relying on my wife and I to supply everything for them still. So we have the most expensive versions of these services that support multiple screens and, you know, 4K and blah, 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 whatever. But I was kind of surprised how many we subscribe to. And my recommendation is just take a look at that yourself. I think you might be surprised too, because there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, from video and music to like content, like things like newspapers and periodicals and Medium type sites, or my site even, you know, which is a subscription, obviously, or can be. Office 365, you know, it's amazing. I mean, we're kind of getting, you know, I think a lot of us are getting kind of monthly feed out. It's just something to look at.
Nice.
In better news, Microsoft just announced, I think right during the show, that they have moved to a limited preview of Project XCloud on iOS.
One more thing to subscribe to.
Yes. Well, it's free now. It's in preview. So it's something, if you are an iOS user, you might want to check this out. If you're already on the XCloud preview, I think you can switch over. I say that because I did. If you go to the form that they have and you're already signed in, it will let you switch from Android to iOS. And I'm going to do that because I hope I can do this on the iPad, because, again, the problem I've had with XCloud is playing these what are essentially Xbox One games on a tiny phone screen is not working out for me. But playing it on an iPad could work. So I'm excited to try it out. It is limited. It's limited most specifically in that I think because of Apple's terms, you can only have one game. And that one game, I think, is Halo, what do you call it, the Master Chief Collection, which is right now Halo Reach. But it's a good step. So, you know, it was Android only before, so you should check that out if you are interested. And I have two app picks as well. Mehdi, who writes Mehdi, I don't know how I wrote his name wrong in the notes, but Mehdi creates a Twitter client called Tweetin. It's on multiple platforms, but the Windows version has been updated to version 5, and he has added support for Windows 10 on ARM. So that's a native Windows 10 on ARM app now if you get it from the store. He will eventually make that available directly from the web, but right now you can just get that through the store. And he added some new features, which are basically improved GIF and video support, configurable download path, and a more seamless method for restoring default settings. So you should check that out. He's a good guy. Yeah.
Even before he started working for you, this was one of our favorite Twitter
comments. Yeah, it's one of the good ones. Yeah. And the other one is, you know, I don't remember when this was. A few weeks back, I was talking about the Surface Duo emulator that Microsoft has for Android Studio, which is a way to see what their dual screen experience on Android looks like. And I was saying, like, yeah, it's for developers, but I mean, anyone could download this and check it out. Well, this week, yesterday, at this Microsoft 365 Developer Day event, they also released the Windows 10X emulator. Microsoft lists a bunch of requirements. You have to be running a 64-bit version of the fast ring version of the Windows Insider Preview, so that's going to limit it somewhat. Your PC has to support Hyper-V because it's a Hyper-V image essentially. That's most computers these days. It says that you have to get the beta version of the next version of Visual Studio. But having tested it, I can tell you, and I should say the latest version of the Windows SDK, you don't have to install that stuff. All you have to do is install the emulator, and it works. So if you want to check out the Windows 10X emulator and see what that system is like today, anyone could do this, just like with the Surface Duo emulator. It's slower. It's buggier. If your machine goes into a power management state, you're never going to get it back. Not your machine, the emulator. You'll have to close it and bring it back. It's not as I don't know if it's because it's Hyper-V or whatever, but it's a full Windows. Also, by the way, it's like a 5 gig download too. It's a big thing because it's Windows, But if you want to see the future today, it's free and anyone can do it.
Cool.
So, check it out.
Yeah.
See why I'm so excited about it.
Oh, I can tell you're jumping up and down.
I think it's great.
Yeah. Time for the enterprise pick of the week, Mary Jo Foley.
The enterprise pick is about LDAP again. A couple weeks ago, I talked about the LDAP apocalypse that some people were predicting.
Oh, it's so good.
LDAP, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. Microsoft is changing the way that channel binding and LDAP signing is happening in order to harden LDAP against man-in-the-middle attacks. And originally, they were supposed to start rolling out these changes in January. And a lot of people were not ready. They hadn't been testing their apps and their domain controllers to make sure that they would handle them. And so a lot of people were predicting there were going to be some very big meltdowns of servers because people hadn't really prepared for this. Well, Microsoft seemed to, again, have listened to customer feedback.
What? Twice in 1 week?
Twice in 1 week? What?
What?
I know. And they are postponing the rollout of this. And they're going to give people more of a heads up. So in March, you're going to get a note from Microsoft about the pending changes, just to make sure as an admin you've seen this. And then the actual changes are not going to happen until sometime in the second half of 2020. So that gives you a lot of time to get ready for this and hopefully be more prepared when it actually does happen. So apocalypse averted, hopefully.
Okay.
Just not the coronavirus apocalypse.
No, not that one. The other one.
we're all screwed.
LDAP apocalypse. LDAP-apocalypse. Codename pick of the week. Let's all go skiing.
So, I know. Codename pick is Veil. So ancient Microsoft historians like me and Paul will remember Veil.
I was going to say,
was the codename for Windows Home Server 2011. But Veil also was a code name that I had heard Microsoft using to refer to containers in Windows 10 Lite, which is 10X, as we know. I kept hearing people say, is it running in Veil? Is it in the Veil container? So I think now, after this week and all the revelations, that Veil also was used at some point by people in Microsoft as the code name for the Win32 container that's in 10X. And the actual acronym Veil stands for Virtualized Application Infrastructure Layer. This codename came out like a couple years ago, and people thought it had something to do with Centennial apps. So we weren't that far off what we thought Veil was. But I believe some people inside Microsoft still do call the container infrastructure in 10X Veil. So if you hear anybody talk about Veil in connection with 10X, that's what they're talking about, the container infrastructure.
Technically an acronym, not a code name.
True.
But I'll take it.
Interesting. If you remember, there was
Very
also
true.
an Aspen that was Visual Studio or something.
So that would be a code
That's
name.
right. Yeah, that's right. Aspen, yep.
Now, if you are diabetic, you probably should not listen to this beer pick of the week.
If you're diabetic, you might not want to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, pretty sweet show. Yeah. What's the beer this week?
The beer pick, this is the real name. I'm not making this up. Evil Twin, our Marshmallow Raspberry Cherry Vanilla Slush Pop.
Oh,
so if you know,
that's not appealing
Evil
at all.
Twin, I know the name sounds terrible.
Yeah.
The beer is delicious.
Oh, okay.
It's a sour IPA. So sour IPAs are kind of like a hybrid, kind of like Azure Stack, except an IPA mixed with the sour. And if you're a sour beer fan, you might want to try this if you're not so sure about IPAs. If you're an IPA fan and not so sure about sours, you should try this. So it tastes like fresh raspberries in a glass, and it looks like raspberries. It's bright red. There's just a hint of vanilla, a little bit sweet. It doesn't taste like marshmallow at all, but it's really a perfect mix, especially on a terrible gray winter day when you want something fruity and delicious, but not too sweet. This beer is excellent. I know. The name is very odd.
It's
Evil Twin has some
suspicious.
very strange names of their beers.
It's suspicious.
Yeah. But I will say also, if you happen to be in New York and you have not yet been to the new Evil Twin tap room in Ridgewood, Queens, you should make a pilgrimage out there and try all their weird beers. Some of them are very weird and not so great, but this and others are very, very worth your time.
Cool. Nice. That sounds
It's a good name.
It's a good name. It's an interesting name, and it's been an interesting show, jam-packed with flavor.
My favorite name of all time is still 667, the neighbor of the beast.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
That is a good name. Actually, I do like that.
That's good.
I'm going to call this show our Marshmallow, Raspberry, Cherry, Vanilla Slush Pop. Because it was kind of a mishmash of flavorful treats.
It kind of was.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary Jo Foley, allaboutmicrosoft.com. That's our ZDNet blog. Paul Thurrott's at Thurrott.com. His books are at leanpub.com, including the Field Guide to Windows 10 and the soon-to-appear...
It might be a pamphlet.
Short.
A booklet, a novella.
Short book. I think it should be a UWP app.
Oh, I think
You should call it
it's going to be.
Applet. An applet.
An applet.
I'm going to name the EXE UWP is dead.exe.
Yeah.
Leanpub.com for those books. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Windows Weekly is a Spike Lee joint. No, it is not a Spike Lee joint.
That's amazing.
I know. Isn't that strange?
Where
did that come
funny.
from?
I literally just thought that as you said
that
it.
to me.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Sent that to me. Well, that's the Spike lag. I mean, the Skype lag. Oh, it could be the Spike lag. It's a Skype Lee
funny.
joint.
That's.
It is actually a weekly production of the Twit Network at our Twit LastPass studios. You can check it out Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That would be 1800 UTC if you want to watch live or listen live, twit.tv/live. You guys, you don't go to the RSA conference probably. I'm guessing.
No.
We, LastPass, who is, of course, a studio sponsor, is doing an after party for RSA. And we're inviting anybody who's at RSA. It's in San Francisco, February 26th. So that's 2 weeks from today, 7 p.m. But you can't just walk up and come in. They're doing it at Bourbon and Branch again, which is a really fun speakeasy, and you need a password to get in. And it's really cool.
We have one of those in Bethlehem.
Yeah, it's really cool, and there's lots of secret rooms and stuff.
Yeah.
If you want the password, you can RSVP, so we know to expect you at twit.to/RSA LastPass20, because we've done this for 2 years now. twit.to/RSA LastPass20. Enjoy some hors d'oeuvres and drinks at the little speakeasy in San Francisco, February 26th, 7 p.m. It'd be kind of fun to see you there. If you can't watch the show live, don't worry. There's on-demand versions available at our website, twit.tv/WW. Podcast is also on YouTube, except for this one because Carson's convinced it's going to be pulled down. This is the minute we post it.
Really?
Right.
He says, I don't know. He says that Microsoft video is going to get us pulled down.
Really?
There are YouTube videos that show entire portions of movies.
I know.
Plus that music, it's just generic, isn't it?
I honestly don't.
They probably pulled it out of Groove Music Maker or something. It's like
I don't get it because we get taken down a lot now.
Yeah.
Because, it's our contention. It's fair use because we're.
Yeah.
Of course it's fair use. We're
covering it. That's a news story, and we're talking about it. But
they showed it. They showed it during their event.
They would want us to show it.
Doesn't matter.
Microsoft.
Doesn't matter.
Really?
Yeah, and this is a chilling effect, and I made the executive decision. Screw it. We're just going to play it and let the chips fall where they may. But if you can't find the show on YouTube, that's why. We always appeal it, and we always get it put back on, but it takes weeks. And by then, nobody really cares about Windows Weekly from February 12th. So,
wow. Well, that's
I don't like the chilling effect. I honestly, I think we should just pull off YouTube.
No, it's a problem.
Yeah. I think we're really stupid. Let's see. But anyway, for the time being, we might be on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to Windows Weekly. And there'll be a big fat hole in it for today's show.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go look later.
What else should I say? Nothing except I may or may not be here. I think I won't be here next week. I'm going to take a couple of days off. Oh, I just have a family thing to attend. But
what about St. Louis? Are we talking about that yet?
Yes, I'm excited. Mary Jo Foley is coming to St. Louis with us March 5th, right?
Yep.
It's not open to the public, unfortunately. But I think we're going to work on somehow, it might be a breakfast thing, but we're going to figure out a way to have a meetup in St. Louis. Cool. And we'll let you know as soon, I guess, because we're getting close.
I know.
There's only a few weeks off.
That's a good breakfast.
What's a good breakfast place in St. Louis?
Well, I don't know, but a good thing to have for breakfast is bagels and beer.
Bagels and beer. The bagels and beer are on us. So we'll just stay tuned for that. And we will make a broadcast out of the panel. It's a panel discussion on the future of the cloud. And that'll be, and of course, that's why we want Mary Jo Foley.
Fad, Leo. It's all going
away.
All
a fad.
You don't have to say this. It's
all a fad.
It's over.
Cloud schmow.
Cloud schmow.
I keep everything on a USB key.
We could have a pancake breakfast. That'd be kind of fun.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
That beer you just recommended could be the syrup.
Yeah, pretty much. Somebody said it looks like
some
frothy.
Good breakfast stouts.
Yeah, looks like frothy blood. Somebody said, if you're a vampire and you want to pass,
Joe's over there like dipping her pancake in the beer.
Yeah. Marshmallow.
It's so good.
Cherry,
if you guys like
slush
raspberries. So good.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mary Jo. Have a great week. We'll see you. We'll meet you in St. Louis, and we'll see you next week on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.
Welcome to Hands on iOS. This is the show where I'll teach you how to get the most out of your iPads, your Apple TVs, your Apple Watches, your iPhones. If you got an iPod, I can help you with that too. We're gonna dig deep. We're going to go into settings and learn about all sorts of new tools. I'm gonna show you the best apps there are, plus loads of tips and tricks, and maybe I'll even answer your question. There's so much to learn, and you can love your devices even more than you already do with Hands on iOS.